420s all good to go? They're all out there?
Yeah, we've been selling them. They have everything except for like a couple
Bangs,
plugs.
you say they're missing.
And bangs, yeah.
Did you guys select a advisor yet?
Yeah, well, Ian came down
You
yesterday.
saw my note. You saw my note.
Yeah. We saw that he had your blessing.
Oh yeah, he would be amazing.
Yeah.
He would, and he's just a great guy, and he's a MacGyver extraordinaire. If you ever have anything broken, he'll fix it for you.
Yeah.
And he's got full access to that huge machine shop, in CAD engineering.
Yeah.
CAD engineering. So that if you need a part made, something like this, boy, he would just have it done for you immediately.
Who is it?
Ian Anderson. He graduated, I think it was ME, probably around. Wow, I don't know because he was in my.
I think he said 2004.
Yes, because I was trying to hook him up with my daughter. I love him. I gave him a full scholarship, by the way.
Wow.
He got a full scholarship at WPI because I was the guy that made decisions on the robotics scholarships, the first FRC scholarships. So he had a full FRC scholarship too. So he was good. But he had a great MQP too. We also we bought a single-cylinder diesel engine, and we did a whole series of tests using waste vegetable oil to check and see power and wear, the different kinds of waste oil. Because he had an old Mercedes, a 190 diesel, that he was converted to run on McDonald's oil.
Really?
Yeah.
That's.
And he's also built himself a tiny home. He lived in a tiny home,
Oh, really?
but his tiny home is getting bigger and bigger now. He's a cool dude. I mean, and he really wants to do this now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, so
Big
he
decision.
came out with his daughter and
Yep.
brought his rowboat. And
Yeah, I know.
Came out while we were practicing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he seemed nice. He was super cool.
Make the decision. Pick him. Do it. Get it done. The other people could be fine, but I made a mistake last time of endorsing the previous person, Rachel LeBlanc. And the only kind of sailing she likes is when she's on a big trimaran or catamaran, cruising in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And so she was not and I interviewed like 4 or 5 people when I left, and she was the best, but she didn't really do much of it. Okay.
I met her once.
Did you meet her once?
Yeah, once.
I didn't know she existed.
Yeah, well, she was a former WPI student as well, but she was on a real fast track and assistant vice president or something, some silly thing. Okay, so let's talk about boat speed, and this is making sailboats move fast and all that kind of stuff. So a couple things I wanted to kind of a little bit of a review here. If we're looking down at a mainsail, or a jib for that matter, and we talked about these telltales, and people spell it wrong all the time, but it's not. That's what it is. It tells you something, and it's a story. That's telltales is what they're called. Some people call them telltales, but I think this is really the real word. Okay, anyway, so those are pieces of yarn or pieces of ripstop nylon or something that are attached to the sail, normally at about this point. And so they can do a couple things. And you're observing these things, and they can both be doing this, streaming back. In other words, they're just like they're attached at one edge, and if you're this is a boat here, and say the boat is like this, and you're sitting back here, and you see, I can see one of them on this side, is this the windward or leeward side? Which way is the wind coming if this is the boat? Where's the wind direction? Coming this way, right? So the boat's going to go this way. So is this the windward or leeward side of the sail? Windward. Okay, so that's the windward side. So you can see that one easily. You can see the telltale on the windward side always. The leeward side one, which is actually more important, that you have to see that through the shadow or through the if the sun comes from here, it's easy to see. A lot of times, like on my 470 sail, I actually cut a little window and put in some plastic, so I could observe them much better. I put little quadrants of plastic into the sail. You'll see a lot of Hobie catamarans will do that too. And so I did that on my original sail, but I don't have that sail anymore. I wore it out. And so it allows you to see it very carefully. So there's several things that can happen. There's actually 4 different things that can happen. You can see it like this, or you can see it like this, or you can see it like this. And there's a 4th condition you might be able to see sometime, which is this. So, which of these conditions, if you're heading the wind like this, well, of course, I'm not going to say that this is the wind direction because you wouldn't see all these things in the wind directions that way, but I want to keep the sail pulling with maximum lift over drag. Which of these conditions has maximum lift over drag?
The top one?
Yeah, and this condition is called what? This would be called trimmed. So this is what you're trying to get normally on a boat for maximum lift over drag. Trimmed, which means both the tails are flowing aft, which means that what it really is showing you is that the air is still attached. It's going like this. The airstream is going like this. It's still attached, and the flow is going like this, which is giving you the optimal lift. What is this called? What does it show? What's it called?
Pinching?
Nope.
That's not pinching.
Nope.
Stalling?
Yeah.
Would say
Stalling.
it's a stalled. That means that what's happening here is that the wind is, your angle of attack is such that it goes like this, and then it can no longer follow that curve, so it ends up, you get turbulence like this. Now, on here it still follows nicely. These are the airstreams, but here it's turbulent flow. It's no longer attached, which means that it has to be attached to develop that nice low pressure area, which is what's pulling your boat. Remember, sails do not push, you pull. They're pulling, because there is a little bit of push from the back side, the windward side of the sail, but the leeward side of the sail is where all the major forces are coming from. It's a low pressure area, which means that the air pressure on this side is bigger than the air pressure on the other side because of this, and so therefore you're getting it is being pulled in that direction. Okay, so this is called stalled. And what's the nature of a stall? What is it? First off, the sail would look pretty nice, but why is that important? What's the nature of it? Why is that not as good as trimmed?
Because the sail stops producing lift, and so
The lift is dramatically reduced. Because now, what you're really left with is only the pressure on the backside, and this big chunk here, which is really about 80% of your lift, disappears. And so the upper side no longer is producing, the leeward side is no longer producing the lift that it should because it's all turbulent flow there. And so it's just the windward side now, which is kind of like a skiing phenomenon. You'll still get a little bit of drive, but it's drastically reduced. And the problem is that the sail looks perfect. Okay, so what's this one called then? Oh.
It's pinching.
Well, it results if you're trying to pinch, but that's not the condition we're looking at. This happens when you try to pinch too much. Well, it's that one word that's used for lots of things. That's luffing. And so it's kind of the opposite of a stall, which means now your angle of attack is so weird that it actually flows here nicely, but in here it doesn't know what to do. It doesn't really know what to do. And so the problem is that, and when it gets a little worse than this, the first thing you'll see is this tail on the windward side start to sag. That's the first thing you'll see. It starts to sag. But the next thing you'll see is that the shape of the sail starts to get soft, and then it goes back hard. It'll start getting soft right in the very beginning of it, which is called the luff of the sail. And so it'll get soft, but if it's already gotten soft, no longer, it's shaking a little bit there, that means you are way beyond where you should have already corrected, because you're tuned to a very low lift condition. Now then, you're not going to get lift on this side or this side. Luffing, the boat pretty much stops. It's a really bad situation. You don't want to luff. Luffing is going to happen every time you tack, because you're going to get to a point where the wind's going to go right to zero angle of attack, which causes luffing, and then it'll restore on the other side. This is an interesting thing. What's it telling me, first off? It's telling me that the air is going in this direction on both sides. Anybody ever had that happen on boats with tail tails? Have you, Alex? You ever had that? No. there's a strategic reason for doing it occasionally. It's a tactical reason for it. It's called by the lead, which means that you have your sail purposely exchanging ends. This is now becoming the left, this is the leech. In other words, the sail would probably be on the opposite tack, but you're not doing that. How does a boat, we're going to talk about right-of-way rules later today. How do you know when two boats are approaching, who has the right-of-way just in general, if two boats are coming together?
Are they both sailboats?
Yeah, both sail. Good question. They're both underway. They're both sailboats. And let's just say they're similar sailboats.
The one on the starboard tack?
Starboard tack. How do you know from a distance what tack a boat is on? If you have binoculars on it, how do you know what tack? What's a starboard tack boat? How can you tell? You can't see the wind from a distance.
Sails on the port side.
Yes. And so if they see the boom on the port side, that means it's starboard, even if it shouldn't be. Because, for example, if I was, this is the front of the boat here. Here's the front of the boat here. And so, well, let's just make it different. I'm going to make it. Sometimes you want to hold starboard when it shouldn't be, just so you keep your right away. Okay, so right now, let's say we're going in this direction here. We're going downwind. And so right now, this is on the starboard side, so this is not a good thing. So this is the port tack. But let's say it was on the other side, anyway. So I'm going to keep it on this side. But the wind shifts, and I'm going like this, and all of a sudden it shifts, goes like this. Well, I should properly have the sail on the other side. But if I want to fool people and think I'm still on that same tack, then I'll let the sail go by the lead. It actually will reverse. It's not a very stable thing, but you can do it for probably 10 or 15 degrees. And so if that ever happens, you better be smart about doing it, because the next thing's going to happen is you're going to get what's called a goose wing jibe. Anybody know what a goose wing jibe is? You would know about them if you don't have boom bangs.
Oh, is it weird?
Yeah, it's where the top of the sail will jibe, and all of a sudden the boom lifts way up and goes swinging across, and it gets a twist like this, and it goes around. You avoid that with the boom bang, because on the goose wing jibe, the upper sail is on a different tack than the bottom of the sail. It twists, and so you avoid that by having a boom bang which holds it down hard, so it doesn't do that. But anyway, so you should understand this. It's really important to understand when a skipper tells you trim the jib, it doesn't mean to pull it in. It means to look at the tails and set it so it's like that. People sometimes when I'm with new people and say, "Oh, trim," they think it means pull. It doesn't mean pull. It means set it so it's at the right condition. If I tell you harden up, that means okay, you're going to pull it in. If I say ease it up, you're going to ease it up. But if I say trim, that means you look at the tails. If you don't have tails, and not all sails have them, how are you going to know when you're trimmed? How do you know you're not stalled? Because a stalled sail looks perfectly. A luff sail will often start getting soft in the front. But how do you know you're not stalled versus trimmed if you don't have tails? How do you know? Nobody's had that experience? You have tails on the 420s?
Yeah,
They do? Good. Do you use them?
I like to.
Which are more important for going to windward? The tails on the main or tails on the jib?
I think we only have
I
tails
like-
on the jib.
I like the ones on the jib.
Yeah, they're much more important. And in fact, on a mainsail, typically, they don't give much information here because of the interference of the mast. And so typically, if you have tails on your main, they're back a little further, which means they're less responsive. The ones on the jib are most responsive. But how do you know? You've been told by the skipper to trim the jib. How do you know if you don't have tails whether you're here or here? You know when you're here, and you should know this because, wow, things are really stupid. Going the wrong way. But how do you know between here and here? The answer is you can't tell by looking. So here's the adage that you should all remember. This one is the adage is just is as strong as roboticists should always have the mantra of speed kills. Same with crud, by the way, but because things on when people are building robots, they often try to make them go too fast. When in doubt,
Let it out.
let it out. What that means is that you're sitting here, you're not sure whether you're stalled or trimmed, so you ease the sheet out, which means this opens it up until it starts to luff. Because this you can tell because the front of the sail will get soft. It starts shaking. And then you tighten up until it just stops. That means you're right there. But if you don't continually do this, and in fact, you know, anybody run spinnakers? A spinnaker is a very large sail. It's roughly triangular, but if you look down on it, here's your boat here. And you'll have a pole normally that holds it from the mast here. And then you have a sheet that's coming off here, and the sail is going to look, it's a big, big overlapping sail. There is the luff of the sail is not attached to a wire, not attached to the front of the mast, it's loose. And so the only way you know, when you're trimming this sheet back and forth, because this thing could bill all the way out like this, or you could pull it in so it comes back in. You want the same thing. You want to have attached flow as much as you can on here. And so the only way you can do it always, you'll see people working the spinnaker sheet, they ease it out until it starts to collapse and pull it in. Ease it out until it starts to collapse and pull it in. You're constantly doing this, because otherwise you don't know you'll be stalled. And so the same thing would happen if you don't have telltales. You ease it to the point where it starts to luff and immediately bring it back a little bit, and that's it. And you have to continue doing that. And so that's the reason why experienced sailors will make sure every boat they use will have telltales, because these are much more responsive. This will happen much quicker than watching the sail actually soften up. Like 5 degrees quicker, you'll see this bottom, the windward telltale start to drag, start to do something stupid. You want them to be lying straight back. Okay. So, any questions about that? This brings another issue which I must talk about. Most of the boats that are in college competitions are sloop rig, which is we talked about, one mast, two sails, and you run a 2-person crew. And you'll have a jib sheet which adjusts which corner of the jib is attached to the jib sheet. Clew, exactly. So attached to the clew of the jib would be the jib sheet, and you'll be responsible for trimming that up. And then attached to the clew of the main would be the end of the boom, and so that's the way you control those things. Now, when you are trying to go to windward, beating, which means you're going to go as fast as you can to windward, velocity made good on that, you want this thing to always be trimmed, but you also want to be sailing the course as tight as you can. If I'm stalled, there's two ways I can get out of stall. Here's the boat. Because stalled means you have too much angle of attack here. You have too much angle of attack between the sail and the wind and the air. So that means it cannot stay there. One way is simply to let the sail out and it reattaches. The other way would be to steer the boat upwind. So the skipper has two choices if they want to avoid, get out of stall. They can either steer it higher into the wind, which then brings it back into a trim condition, or they can ease the main out. And the difference between that is if you're on a reach, remember a reach is always one point to the next point, which means that when you're on a reach, you're trying to go from point A to point B, you don't turn the boat to avoid a stall or to avoid a luff, you adjust the sails. So anytime you are crew on a 2-person dinghy where you're in control of the jib, and the skipper says, well, let's reach across to this next point, we're on a close reach, or well, watch out when he says close reach, but we're on a beam reach or a broad reach. That means you're compelled to continually adjust the jib sheet all the time to keep it trimmed on the course that your skipper is traveling on. What if you're close hauled? What if you're trying to go to windward and it's stalled? Well, if you're going to windward and it's stalled, then you would not want to ease the sails because you want to go higher into your direction. And so, if you're close hauled, you never adjust the sails to get it trimmed or stalled. You adjust the heading of the boat. And so if you're a crew, most crews, my crew will always do this. Once I say I'm close hauled, I'm going up to windward as hard as I can, I'm beating into the wind, I want them to cleat the jib sheet off. And don't touch it unless the wind velocity changes. Because otherwise, because I'm going to use, as a skipper, I'm going to use the tails on the jib to know how high I can come trying to go to windward. If you keep adjusting the sail while I'm trying to go as high as I can, then we have two people doing the same thing and you'll lose track of it. Never cleat a jib if you're reaching, but cleat it every time if you're beating. Is that, you guys do it that way when you're racing?
Yeah.
Unless we're in FJs, because they don't have jib cleats, and you just kind of have to suffer.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So it's a subtle thing, but if you do that, then you understand what the differences are. Because you can get out of a stall or get out of a luff by two measures. One by adjusting the sails, other by adjusting the helm, the steering. And so, if you're on any point where you're going on a straight line, then you adjust the sails. But if you are trying to get as high as you can to a windward destination, then you're always adjusting the helm to get as high as you can there. And so that means you must cleat off the jib. And by the way, any boat with a fractional jib like a FJ or a 420 or a 470, where the jib is actually quite small, less than half the size of the main, you don't ever have to dump that in a big puff. Because if you dump the main, it'll block the wind coming off the jib. And so, because it just like a slam, it'll just close off. And so the skipper has the throttle when it comes to heel control by being overpowered. People are thinking, oh, I gotta dump the jib, it's too much wind. Nah. No, the jib should stay there hard. If you have to have the entire main luffing, that's okay. Keep the jib hard, no matter what the winds are. Because if you let the boom all the way out, it'll totally stop the flow coming through the jib anyway, and so it will stall it. Okay, I wanted to review one more thing about this. We talked about it a little bit. If we look at drag versus velocity, we find that the drag just kind of goes almost linearly for some time. As you go faster, there's more drag. But at some point, there's something that happens like this. What is this point called? What velocity is that? We're saying there's a peak of drag.
Critical.
We talked about it before. Remember, it's roughly 1.34 times the square root of the water line.
Hull speed.
Hull speed. That's hull speed. So what happens? This drag here, and this drag would continue on kind of like that. This is skin friction, or skin drag, and this is wave drag. And so wave drag will peak. It comes up very suddenly, because remember, this is when the secondary wave you have, as you go faster and faster, the waves you're producing from the bow wave and the next wave get further and further apart. And right about here is where suddenly the boat no longer rides between these, and this one departs the transit, so the boat starts going uphill. And that's when it gets much, much higher drag. But once you've crossed that on a planing boat, then the drag reduces. It takes more power. This is the reason why, and according to the rules, I just read this today, dinghies are allowed to pump once to get to plane. If you're on a windsurfer, you're allowed to pump multiple times. Foil boats can pump as much as they want. But apparently, according to international rules, you're only allowed to pump once, which gives you you're suddenly getting a little bit more push just to get over that crest so you start planing.
What is pumping?
Pumping is when you grab the sails and you just suddenly yank them in hard. You pull them in hard, really fast. And what that does is it creates a kind of an extra push for a moment. The sail will stall eventually if you do that, but you'll get a momentary surge. It can also be done by rolling the boat hard.
Yeah, it's a roll tack.
Yeah, and so you can propel a boat by sculling through the air, And you can do that, you should know how to do that, but it's illegal for racing. You can also propel a boat by sculling through the water, and that also is illegal in racing. But you can have multiple tacks, and of course, roll tacks are a much abused thing. You know what ooching is? Ooching is shifting your weight quickly on the boat also to kind of surge ahead. That's called ooching. Pumping and ooching are illegal if done to excess in racing. And of course, roll tacking
Yeah, you can do.
is you're allowed to roll tack unless it becomes, when you exit a roll tack, it cannot be faster than you would have gone before the tack. It's a tricky thing. It's kind of like speed walking. There's rules about, when you race walk, you're not allowed to have your feet apparently both in the air at one time. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at the world record speed walkers or race walkers, their feet are both airborne. But it's not quite visible by the judges. And so in this case, the roll tacking is something you do, but the rules state that when you roll tack, you can actually get quite a squirt of speed because you're dragging the wind, you're creating your own relative wind by having the boat hard over to leeward and then rolling it hard to windward as you go through the tack. And that causes apparent wind to go as the mass sweeps through the air. It changes the apparent wind and gives it some velocity. And so it'll squirt ahead. And you're allowed to do that, but not in excess, because otherwise you go back and forth and just keep moving without.
It's once per tack and once per rounding of
Yeah.
a mark.
Yeah.
Or at the start.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
do it on start. Or you can do a load and flatten.
Yeah.
So those are all racing stuff here. Okay, but understand that once you've gotten above this bit, the drag does appreciably reduce. And of course, this is very clear on a power boat, playing like a ski boat, because you'll see it takes a lot of throttle. And once you get above, then you pull the throttle back. It takes a lot less effort, and especially on a wind surface, they're really sticky because they have a huge amount of skin drag because they're just flat bottoms. And so they're really sticky until you get them planing, and all of a sudden, whoop, then it just wants to stay planing forever. Which is the reason why my group averages 30 knots when they go out. They have their little GPSs and they'll average 30 knots. Okay, so this is all about speed. Okay, now one of the coolest things about sailing is looking at something called speed polars. Who's heard of that before? Oh, this is cool. So if we draw a circle here, and we're going to draw a couple other circles in here. Let's draw this just for the moment here, like this. Here's the wind direction. We're talking about the true wind direction here. This is boat speed. Let's say it's 2 knots, 4 knots, 6 knots, 8 knots. So what it says, it predicts at every angle, and these are true wind directions. So for example, this would be running, a pure run would be in this direction. This would be a beam reach. This would be a broad reach. This is close reach. So you can do this. There's actually programs you can use for any boat now if you can get the hull and the sails there, and it'll predict what the speeds will be. So they're done for a certain speed range. So let's say let's look at a 420. A 420 has hull speed around 5 knots. I think it's around 5 knots. And so let's say we have a 10 knot wind. So this is going to be a 10 knot wind. Okay. So it says this is going to be 45 degrees, and there's 90 degrees, and 135 degrees, 180 degrees, and it's symmetrical. Starboard tack and reverse and port tack. So it's going to look something like this. I'm going to see if I can make it look like I want it to look here. Let's see. It will look something like that, this is predicting your speed that the boat will go in any direction. So, for example, if you look here, it says that it probably could still go to windward, maybe at 30 degrees. That would be called pinching. But if we really wanted to go in this direction, we would pick the point here, this tangent to the highest point. And so this says that in this case here, I would actually be going 4 knots, but my speed, my VMG, VMG means velocity made good. In other words, if I want to go here, I don't care how fast I'm going, I want to know how much pull I have going this direction here. So the VMG here looks like maybe 3 knots. And so this says that my best tacking angle at this particular wind speed would be 45 degrees. Because that's going to be the highest VMG. Now what about going downwind? Going downwind, going straight downwind is never the fastest for most boats. And the reason why is that I guarantee no matter what your speed is, you will never go faster. You can never go faster than the true wind when you're going downwind. Any kind of boat. I don't care what kind of boat you have, if you're going straight downwind, you can never exceed the speed of the wind. And yet I can exceed that easily on, this is probably it's probably not a good 10 knots. This is more like a 7, 6 knots. This is probably like an 8 knot breeze or whatever. So it says here, in this case, that the maximum speed I get here looks like it's about 6 knots in this thing. But also, if I wanted to go downwind, then I would pick the point here that has the highest, this point right here. Which would mean that in this particular case, my jibe angles may be 30 degrees either side of straight down. Why is it that this broad reaching is faster than a running? Somebody else. What do the sails do when you're straight running? What do they do? How do they develop push?
They don't have any lift.
That's right.
Drag.
It's 100% drag. But as soon as you get any angle on them, now they can develop lift. And so, at this point, we're still developing lift from the sails, not just drag. But here it's only drag. And so that's the reason why, especially in the higher performance boat you have, the bigger the difference will be between the running speed and the broad reaching speed. And you'll discover on the, for example, on the AC 50, or the, what they call them, F50s, which are what's used for the Sail GP, which are hydrofoil suspended catamarans, they tack through 90 degrees and they jibe through 90 degrees, and their VMG downwind will be, the velocity good downwind will be 3 times the wind speed. So in a 10 knot breeze, they would be going, this point here would be 30 knots and their actual speed is like 40. Because again, their entire speed is not all going downwind, because the only downwind portion is this part here. But their VMG will be, velocity made good going downwind will be 3 times the actual speed. But if they were to go straight downwind, they're going to be going less than 10 knots. Because all they got is drag there. And of course, it's even more dramatic with ice boats. But ice boats, curiously enough, ice boats and foil suspended boats still optimize. It's about 90 degree tack angles and about 90 degree jibe angles. You'll see that that's what it works out for almost all of those the same way. Now the thing about speed polars, which is a little bit misleading, again, remember, this is the curve we saw was like this. This is if you are running a sloop rig. If you have a spinnaker, you'll have this same thing here, but then you have another one that goes like this. And this would be once you raise a spinnaker. The spinnaker is not going to be useful here at all, but here it'll make a huge difference in speed. And it makes it much more obvious that you should not go straight downwind, you should be jibing. Under spinnaker, jibing angles will be much more critical. And most people on sloops, like a non-spinnaker sloop, like a 420 in racing, I don't know how you guys do, but most people do not jibe. They go wing and wing straight downwind.
Yeah, that's typically what people do.
And wing and wing is just the way to get the most drag possible. You bring the jib off to one side, your crew will hold it out, and then you'll either hold out the boom on the other side. You'll try to keep it from going by the lee by hoping the wind is straight down there.
It's really fun.
Yeah, really, I hate it.
Really?
You like going downwind?
But I'm a skipper.
Oh, I hate it. It's just so boring.
It's so boring.
It is
you just
so
have
boring.
To be, like, constantly watching the other boats and like the
Yes,
visual
and
speed.
I'm just constantly watching the overall wind to make sure I don't accidentally jibe something. That's what I'm worried about all the time. Because you have especially in a high wind, you have a fairly narrow range before, if the winds are shifty at all, that you can get yourself in trouble quickly.
Yeah, but you can always head up or jibe.
Well, yeah, but in high wind, jibing is something that I want to know what's going to happen.
Have your centerboard up unless it's high wind, but like if you jibe and the boat goes whoop,
So,
Well,
we
this
talked
is
about the
just
two, we talked about the function of the centerboard, and remember the centerboard has nothing to do with stability. The keel does. Centerboard actually is an unstabilizing device because its lift is going to help roll the boat in the adverse condition. It doesn't help, it doesn't fight the heel of the main, it actually augments it. And so, realizing that, what function does the centerboard have when you're going downwind? The lift is not required. And so indeed, you would, if you were gutsy, you'd pull all the way up to reduce the skin drag of it. But it does make the boat squirrely because it makes it steer like you're on roller skates in front. You know, because normally it acts like a pivot point. When you turn the helm, it's going to pivot around that centerboard. When that centerboard's there, now it says, oh, I'm pushing my stern around, but I'm not too solid here. What's going on? And so it becomes, most people will keep it a little bit down just for added steering control, especially if you're a skipper.
and if you capsize, there's nothing to stand on.
That, but capsizing dead downwind is, that's when you've screwed the pooch. You shouldn't be doing that, but it happens. But normally it's happening when you do an accidental jibe.
Yeah.
Okay, so VMGs are really quite good. You can look up any boat you want to. Yep.
How would you find the VMG if you're on a beam reach?
Pardon?
If we're on a
Yeah,
dead
right.
beam reach.
Okay, so again, it's interesting. If I really wanted to go straight this way, I would want to find a place where this tangent was mostly there, but it's going to be so close to being here that, yeah. Maybe if you had a spinnaker, then you would probably, you would shift it out to here, and it would make more sense. But on a normal non-spinnakered boat, your fastest VMG going 90 degrees is to sail a true 90 degrees. But just keep in mind, when you're sailing a true 90 degrees, it doesn't look like that on your boat. You'll have about a 60-degree apparent wind angle, depending upon the velocity of the wind. Just keep that in mind, because the beam reach is not when the wind is 90 degrees to your sail. It's when your course is 90 degrees to the true wind. And it's a subtle thing. This is the reason why from here all the way to here, the boat is going to be going upwind in apparent wind. And so and polars are always done with true wind speeds. They should be. True wind directions, true wind speeds. And of course your wind velocity here, your apparent wind velocity is much lower than it would be when you're here. Because here, your 3 knots here adds to the 10 knots to make like 12, 13 knots. And down here, your speed here of maybe like 6 knots would subtract from that wind. So those are interesting. Now I had the rare privilege of being on board the J-boat Endeavor, which is a 137-foot long sloop. It was built in 1936, I believe, for the America's Cup. And people will argue today that it was the fastest J-boat ever built, even though it never actually competed. I don't believe. I think Ranger won out that year. But and I saw its speed polars. Holy crap! First off, it would sail within about a 12 to 13 degree apparent wind angle. It's an incredibly long, very, very tall, 190-foot high mast, I believe, something like that. And I just couldn't believe it. The VMG on that boat going upwind would typically be like 12 knots. And for a displacement boat, that's crazy fast. And it was way displacement, over 100 tons. Okay. All speed polars, okay. Let it out. Very good, very good, very good. Okay. In the next few minutes, let's talk a little bit about, going fast. Going fast is way cool, but it's especially important if you want to race. But as experienced sailors will tell you, boat speed seldom wins, especially in intercollegiate or academic, bits. Boat speed very seldom makes a difference. It's tactics that makes a difference normally, because the boats are all identical. And once you've learned how to keep a boat trimmed, everybody should be able to make the boat go as fast as they can. So it's really about managing where you're going to sail and managing the opportunities that show up. And so we're talking a little bit about racing a bit here. How many people race? Just you race? Yeah, okay. You're just not a joiner here. Well, first off, let me talk a little bit about racing in general. And there's lots of different courses you can race on. Typical in college is triangle course. Have you done a lot of triangle courses? Are you doing these days?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah.
Most of them have an offset too.
They have an offset?
Yeah, windward offset.
Oh, really?
And like a gate.
Huh.
That's
a
lot
new
that
thing,
we
huh?
did today.
So never
Or
used to do
this
this.
year, I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so well, here's a course that this is the kind of
Yeah.
course that we often race.
I've done these too.
Yeah, we do this on our this is the way we do on our lake. This is the wind directions be like this. There'll be a starting gate, and so you guys know what Le Mans racing is all about. Le Mans, the car race in Le Mans. You haven't seen that? Le Mans racing was interesting because Le Mans is a French race. It's for sports cars and kind of stuff. But the rules in Le Mans that all drivers have to start not in their cars, but on a starting. They have to run to the cars, have to start the cars up, and then go. The only thing which is like that is on ice boat starts. On ice boat starts, all the ice boats are parked with their bow right on starting line, parked. Everyone on this side is everyone on this side has got to be aimed this way. They'll be on starboard tack. Everyone on this side got to be on port tack. You start that way. When the gun goes off, you push your boat to get started. Because they won't start until you push them, get it going fast. So people have track shoes on and spikes, and you all push off here. This is to avoid any high-speed collisions. Half the field has to be on starboard, on port tack, and half the team has to be on starboard tack. And that's what you do. But on regular wet water racing, it's a running start. And so this is the clever part about this is trying to do two things: to be in the advantaged end of the line, but also to be at full speed. So there'll be a line here. And traditionally, you'll get like I don't know how they do it now, but you have a 5-minute, there'll be a 5-minute horn. Three.
Two,
They'll get 5, they'll get
1.
5? Okay, there'll be a 3 and a 1 and then a start. And traditionally, this is going to be the long whistle or the long horn.
Yeah, minutes are long.
Yeah.
Increments of 10 are short.
Yeah, so we typically do 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1:30, 1 minute, 30, 10.
Yeah, they'll count. They actually do the countdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
They do the last 5.
yeah. So officially, by international rules, you have a 5, a 4, a 1, and a start. But I know that college, they often give you a countdown because people don't have all their watches, and they have people that do it monitor. But anyway, so the idea is that you time yourself here, and you have to be behind this starting line at the beginning of it, and you're trying to figure out so that you can be going full speed when you cross the line exactly at that time. And if you cross early, you'll be over early. It's a foul, which means you must come back and recross. You have to look at the rules every time, but that's normally what you have to do. You have to go ahead. If you any part of the boat crosses a line, any part, and so you try to get that close as you can. But now it's really important with boats that have a lot of mass because it takes a long time for them to accelerate. For a 420, you don't really need to be going full speed. You just need to be in the right spot so you can cheat in and accelerate. It takes you just a few seconds to accelerate. And so, but on a boat that is planeable or a boat like a foiling boat, the difference between going across here and being full speed going across may be double the speed. And so for those, it's really tricky to get in there. And of course you have the regular right-of-way rules, which we're going to talk about right now. So the most general right-of-way rule we talked about, and this is the reason why we talked about people sometimes will go by the lead. So they sail by the lead to kind of influence their strategy. Anytime you have two boats coming together, this is whether you're racing or not, you need to know this. If two boats are coming together, and the wind's like this, one boat's going to be the giveaway boat, and one's going to be the right-of-way boat. So, if you look at this, and the boat, this will sail on this side, this guy will sail on this side. So which one has the right-of-way? This one, because
on the starboard tack?
Yes, and because more specifically, what you can see from its boom is on the port side, which means it's a starboard tack, which means that if you're coming in a collision course, and how do you know this? If you're way back here, and you're sailing your proper course, the other boat's over here, how do you know if you're on a collision course? We do the same thing in flying all the time, because there's a big sky theory, but incredibly, when you're flying, there's still a chance of hitting another airplane.
The horizon.
Pardon?
If the horizon isn't being eaten by the boat.
Well, the way we do in the airplane, you see a boat, put your finger on the windscreen, and then you look and see an airplane. And if the airplane's still behind your finger, that means you're on a collision course, which means that your relative bearing stays constant. So if you see this guy here, and you say, oh, he's right here, and I can see him right from the shrouds here. I'm sitting over here, and I'm looking, he's right behind the shrouds. Up here, he's still right behind the shrouds. This means you're on a collision course. If he's dropping back behind the shrouds, that means you're going to overtake him.
You can also pick a point like on shore.
Yeah,
and-
yeah, but you want to have, but it's, what you're really looking for is your relative bearings. If the relative bearings, and if you have a compass, you can take a hand bearing on and see if, and you're hoping that changes. If it doesn't change, then you're on a collision course. So these guys, the same bearing stays the whole time. So you're right. This person has the right of way. So what did this person do? Yes, they should maintain it. You do not want to give up a right, because once you give it up, once you've altered, you've lost your right of way. I've always talked to my wife about this too, in cars. When cars are merging, she's all the time slowing down for a merging car. You should not do that. Because then it confuses the person, oh, I can jump in there. If a car is coming in merge lane, you have the right of way. If you give up the right of way, then you've lost the right of way. Same way, it's really strict with boats. You must maintain that until a collision looks like is going to happen, then you have to avoid.
Yeah, technically on the water for like commercial boats, there is no right of way. One boat is the stand-on boat, which means
Yeah.
they should maintain your course, but if you're going to collide, you do have to get out of the way. Like if you hit someone else and you're like, I have the right of way, the Coast Guard's like gonna get you.
Any collision, both boats are normally charged with any collision. Same with sailing often.
Yeah.
I mean, often too.
You can still get protested
Yeah,
even
exactly.
if you had right of way.
Because if you could have avoided the collision, then you should have. Good point. But in this case, and so this means that you must dip behind
Or tack.
or
Or
tack.
tack. But
Okay,
then you're
so
under
now,
them, so-
let's say you tacked. So now, you're both going up here, and you're right here. Now which boat has the right of way? And the wind's coming from here. Because we haven't had tacked, and you're like this. Now which boat has the right of way now?
The bottom.
Why?
Because they're down.
They're lured. A lured boat has the right of way. Which means that this boat here cannot force me down. I can force that one up. And so the general rule is, I mean, there's lots of intricacies, but understand that if you're colliding and you're on opposite tacks, starboard tack has the right of way. If you're on the same tack and you're still you're coming together, the leeward boat has the right of way, as long as there is an overlap, like this is showing. When any part of your boat is in front of their transom, then it's an overlap situation, and you have what's called luffing rights sometimes, which means that I can steer up and make this person have to steer up further. And so those are probably the most essential, just for normal non-racing conditions. And of course, a sailboat is the privileged yacht in general, against power boats, unless the power boat is constrained to a channel, or unless he's a whole lot bigger than you are, or unless he's a whole lot less maneuverable than you are, or unless he's under tow, or unless, any boat that's under anchor is always a privileged yacht. You cannot sail into any yacht because, oh, I'm a sailboat, I sail you because you're anchor. Oh, okay. It must be underway.
I think it's not under command,
Yep.
restricted maneuverability,
Yep.
engaged in fishing, powerboat, sailboat.
This whole thing is covered by these things called
Correct.
COREG, which is collision regulations and stuff. It's something that powerboaters need to know. A lot of the sailboats pretty much ignore it, according to my powerboat people. And also, code reg says you must always have monitored, channel 16 and all that kind of stuff. And of course, sailboats don't normally do that either. I never did too much. We believe in the big ocean effect, like the big sky effect. What's the chances of being in the same place at the same time?
It's so easy to hit other boats on the water. Like,
So if you really want to learn more about this, study coal rigs. In fact, on a sailboat, the MQP is required to comply with coal rigs in competition with when we do the robotic sailing. That's the reason why you must be able to take command of a robotic sailboat at any time to avoid one of these collisions. Okay. So it gets more complicated. The entire. And by the way, so you always have to have a. It'll be in a sailing race, but normally you'll pass to port, which means you must go in this direction around these particular things, and you like this, and whoever the first one across the line is going to win that thing. Except, you may be doing all sorts of maneuvers, kind of like this, and kind of getting around there. Oh, okay, I've gotten around, and so you go like this and come back here. Now, you think you may have rounded it, but you haven't.
you rounded wrong.
Because the rules are that once you've looked at your track and imagine you pull the string behind you, and you pull the string tight, the string must have gone from here like this, like it can't go around in this direction, because that's not rounding in the proper way. And so, anecdote, I was way ahead of the fleet on my 470 on Water Lake, and I saw the committee boat, and I saw the finish line. It was a new course, I hadn't seen it. And there was we normally have a pontoon boat as a committee boat, which is on one end of the finish line. So I saw him, and oh wow, so I come screaming in here, and I don't get a horn saying I finished. Because I saw the buoy, and I saw the committee boat, and it turned out that this was just a passing boat. And it was actually, the committee boat was over here, and this was the mark here, so I missed the finish line. So, I'll just duck in like this and go across. Whoops. Now, if I pulled the string, it would not have gone through here. So, I thought this was going to take care of me. Still, I had to come all the way back around like this and go like this to finish, because just crossing the line in this direction would have not satisfied me, because my string would have never gone on this side of that, or excuse me. No, that was right. That was right.
There's a downwind?
This was a downwind. Hold on here, I'm trying to remember. Oh no, it was upwind.
Yeah.
Okay, so but anyway, I can't remember what I was doing here. But I didn't cross the thing. I had to go back around the buoy. Where my string? I can't remember how it worked now. Anyway, okay. The major difference behind the start. The start's important for any racing, but the other major thing is to understand when to tack. When do you tack? When you're on an upwind leg. When would you tack? You're just going to go 90 degrees each time? What are you going to do?
Attack where there's good wind.
What is a good wind? How do you define a good wind?
If I'm not covered and if there's puff.
Okay, but particularly, what condition in the wind is what you're looking for? If you're all by yourself, no other boats there, and what are you looking for in the wind? You're looking for
The closest angle.
header or lift. Wind on a lake especially oscillates both in velocity and in direction.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can actually time it. Sometimes there'll be a rhythmic change, and it's called being in sync or being out of sync. It'll make a huge difference in the actual distance you sail going upwind. If you're in sync, it means every time you tack, the wind has shifted to be what's called a favorable wind, which means a header, a lift. It means, in other words, I'm trying to go here, and the wind shifts like this. It means I can go higher.
Yeah.
And then when it goes this way, then I tack, because this way I have to fall off in order to keep my lift. But if I turn here, it becomes a header. It comes a lift in the other direction. So if you get in sync when you're going upwind, you monitor the oscillation of the wind, and you'll tack whenever it's favorable to tack. Now, of course, you have other constraints, other people around you and stuff like this, but once you get, this is the reason why in a properly sailed boat, once you get in the lead, your lead only grows. Because if you know what you're doing, then you're no longer impeded by other boats. You're in the lead, and so the rich get richer, as they say. Once you're in front, you can normally walk away from the rest of the fleet unless you make some boner mistake. So the idea is don't let anybody get ahead of you. And you do that by controlling them through taking the, getting the right of way, making sure that you can make them go behind you, and slow them down when they need to be slowed down.
That's why the start is half the race.
It is, if you look again at SailGP, it's about 70% of all the races were won by whoever wins the start. Because once they get in the front, it's pretty hard to pass. All right, so we have one more session, is that correct?
In this term, yeah.
Yeah, right, okay, very good. Okay, good enough, guys, that's it for me.